What is the go with hydrogen these days? Everyone is talking about it all of a sudden. It is literally the most abundant element in the universe and also plentiful on Earth, making up 2/3 of the atoms in water and present in vast volumes of organic compounds. Hydrogen was first produced artificially in 1671 and discovered as an element in 1766. It has been quietly going about its business for hundreds of years before suddenly, a couple of years ago, people started to pay attention. It's fair to say that right now, hydrogen is having a bit of a moment. Now, I love a new technology. Pretty much any new technology gets me excited, but I will admit that I am a little bit confused and conflicted about hydrogen. The current hydrogen hype is mostly about green hydrogen. That's hydrogen produced from green electricity in a process called electrolysis. It's interesting now because it's a way that we can essentially store surplus electricity. And as we incorporate more and more variable renewable energy sources to our grid, it's expected that we will have a lot of time where we have much more electricity than we can use. Currently, we can store this via batteries or pumped hydro, and green hydrogen is another option. Now, making hydrogen from electricity is not an innovation. This process has been around for over 200 years, but hydrogen produced in this way is rare. It makes up only a tiny fraction of the current global hydrogen production. The vast majority of today's hydrogen comes from fossil fuel sources. If hydrogen is made from natural gas, it's either grey if CO2 emissions aren't captured and stored, or it's called blue if they are. Today, the primary uses of hydrogen are in industrial processes like oil refining and ammonia and steel production. But the current hype about hydrogen, it's not to replace dirty hydrogen for clean in these existing applications. Instead, the plan is to expand to a range of new applications like passenger cars and electricity generation, amongst a lot of others. Now, on the one hand, I think it is really cool to see a lot of governments rallying behind a new technology development that could potentially speed the green energy transition. But on the other hand, I'm skeptical about many of the proposed applications. I don't doubt that there are several things that you can do with green hydrogen that will really make a good contribution to the green energy transition. Like it has the potential to help reduce emissions in several hard to abate sectors like steel and cement manufacturer, shipping and aviation. But these aren't really the applications that I hear politicians talk about mostly, and that's the source of my confusion. Probably the most hyped aspect of the imagined future hydrogen economy is smoothing of variable generation from renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. The argument goes that as we add more and more variable electricity generation, there will be a lot of times when there is way more green energy supply than there is demand. At such times of oversupply, the price of electricity will be zero or even negative, and green hydrogen manufacturing facilities can use this free electricity to turn water into hydrogen to be stored for future use. The second application that governments are really pushing for hydrogen is passenger cars. At least 16 countries have incentives or targets for this application, making it the one with the most government policy support out of all of the different applications for hydrogen. This all sounds great. Renewable electricity generation is variable, so in the future we'll have surplus energy we can use for free to make hydrogen. And hydrogen passenger cars will be just like the internal combustion engine cars that we're all used to, except for they won't harm the environment. Perfect. But when you look deeper into these two applications, I can see 4 red flags that might derail government plans for a full hydrogen economy. The first problem is that the business case for green hydrogen seems to depend on very low or negative electricity prices occurring a lot. But wind farm developers, for example, would not build wind farms if they're expecting a lot of their electricity to be generated at times of low or negative prices. The same's got to be true for solar or any other form of electricity generation. The business cases wouldn't add up. Banks wouldn't lend to them under these conditions. I just really can't believe that anyone's going to be investing in wind farms or solar or any type of electricity generation that will experience persistently low or negative energy prices The economics won't make sense in this situation unless governments step in with really big subsidies. The second problem that I can see is that for the green hydrogen storage or passenger car business case to work, the cost of green hydrogen needs to come way down. As well as needing very cheap electricity, the manufacturing process also needs to become cheaper. Now, one of the main drivers of cost savings in an expensive manufacturing facility is to make sure that it's fully used. That means getting close to 24/7 production and not just waiting around for periods with low energy prices before you turn your really expensive equipment on. But in recent years, there have been negative electricity prices less than 2% of the time in Germany, which is a country with one of the highest proportions of variable renewable generation in their electricity grid. Electrolyzers are expensive. You can't make cheap hydrogen if you're only using your expensive equipment 2% of the time. The third problem is efficiency. It's very efficient to put electricity straight to the grid without storage. Where storage of any kind is required, energy is transformed from one form to another, so there are always going to be some losses. Batteries are pretty efficient, so you get back around maybe 95% of the electricity that's been stored in the batteries before going back to the grid. And if you use it to power a battery electric car, it's about 80% efficient. For hydrogen storage, the efficiency is much lower. There are losses from the electrolysis process, where electricity is used to turn water into hydrogen and oxygen. Then there are losses from storage and transportation. And finally, there are losses when you use the hydrogen to produce electricity again, whether to the grid or in a fuel cell electric vehicle. After all this, the round trip efficiency is around maybe 35%. So you need 2 to 3 times as much electricity production for the same outcome if you store the energy as hydrogen instead of batteries, or putting it directly into the grid, which is obviously the best of all. Given that few countries have anything close to a zero emissions grid, that means that for now at least, you are nearly tripling the emissions from electricity production every time you use hydrogen for something that could have been electrified. Now, of course, these efficiencies should improve as hydrogen technology matures, but never to zero. Based on today's technology maturities, there is a big gap to be overcome by improved hydrogen technology. And remember that the alternative technologies are improving too. That brings me to the fourth problem I see, which is that the case for developing hydrogen storage seems to ignore that other technologies have a head start and are improving rapidly. A lot of the discussion around hydrogen compares the current state of storage and grid technology with hydrogen technology expected after 20 years development. All technologies are going to continue to develop in the meantime. They're not standing around still just waiting for hydrogen to catch up. For hydrogen to become a mainstream storage option, it needs to progress faster than the alternatives. In many ways, hydrogen behaves a lot like a fossil fuel. It can be transported in gas pipelines and burned in gas turbines with just probably some small modifications. Maybe you can use it for heating, and you can even convert an internal combustion car engine to run on hydrogen if you really wanted to. These similarities make it easy for fossil fuel companies to support it, and for governments of resource-based economies to feel comfortable with it. Now, as I mentioned at the start, today most hydrogen is not green, but it's made from natural gas or coal. It's grey or brown hydrogen. I think there's a risk that if we build the hydrogen infrastructure first, without cleaning up our electricity generation, I wonder if it turns out that we don't achieve our green hydrogen goals, we might make up the shortfall with grey hydrogen instead. Until we reach a 100% clean electricity grid, there will be emissions associated with hydrogen. Unavoidable inefficiencies in hydrogen production and storage mean that hydrogen use for anything that could have been directly electrified will end up increasing emissions. When electricity grids become 100% renewable, and if the imagined surplus of renewable energy eventuates, only then will hydrogen used for storage and electricity actually be green. So at the start, I did say that I am excited about hydrogen technology development, and now I've pretty much just gone on and on about the negatives. I do think that there are plenty of opportunities for hydrogen to contribute to a future green economy, and there are applications where hydrogen technology is particularly promising. For the case of using hydrogen as storage for electricity generation, there are some specific situations where the red flags that I outlined earlier are not relevant. Like, for example, locations that have excellent renewable energy potential but are too far away to connect to existing grids cheaply. Another example would be that you could use wind turbines to produce hydrogen rather than electricity to the grid directly. So this would mean you could avoid some turbine inefficiencies, and in the case of offshore wind, you would avoid the considerable cost of undersea cables. Another potential application is for long-term energy storage. Many locations have very different energy demands for winter than in summer. If we can solve the challenges associated with hydrogen storage, then it could provide a better long-term storage option than batteries could. There are also several hard to electrify sectors where hydrogen may present an opportunity for a more straightforward solution. Some examples that sound exciting to me are industrial processes like steel and cement manufacture, and these two together make up actually a really large proportion of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. Maybe also aviation, where the weight penalty for using batteries instead of aviation fuel is a really big challenge. Very long-haul trucking transport is another area where batteries are not quite up to the challenge yet. All of these applications also have the possibility of electrification, but in each case, the technology is years away from maturity, and so hydrogen has a chance to win the race to technology dominance in these applications. So I am cautiously optimistic about hydrogen's potential to help with the green energy transition. But hydrogen is definitely no silver bullet, and I'm concerned that many people are talking about it as if it is the single answer to all of our climate problems. It will be very easy to get perverse outcomes if we don't carefully target hydrogen to the right applications where it has the most potential to reduce emissions. There are plenty of opportunities like this, but the widespread use of hydrogen to store and then generate electricity to the grid, in my opinion, this is amongst the least likely. I am also unconvinced that passenger cars running off hydrogen makes much sense. Battery electric cars require far less electricity generation, and the perceived benefits of hydrogen passenger cars compared to battery electric cars, like longer range, faster refueling, these differences are diminishing rapidly as battery technology improves. I think that by the time hydrogen cars can get there, battery cars will be there already. The real potential for hydrogen is going to lie in the niche applications where the conditions are just right for hydrogen to gain an edge over alternatives. Identifying and prioritizing these will be important because currently the world's production of green hydrogen is very tiny. As green hydrogen production capacity increases, it shouldn't go to applications in which electrification is an option. So this video is just the first in a series that I'm going to be making on hydrogen technology. In future videos, I'm going to be visiting hydrogen projects in all sorts of applications and talking to the experts working on these projects to find out where is the best potential for green hydrogen. This will include looking more into those applications that I have kind of ruled out in this video, like using hydrogen for electricity storage and generation and for passenger cars. I'm keeping an open mind. I want to learn more from people who know these industries better than I do, see if I'm missing something, and I'm totally open to having my mind changed about these technologies. And in a way, I hope that I'm wrong. A hydrogen economy has so much exciting potential. I hope it's going to happen. But for sure, we need to be careful about how it's done to avoid perverse outcomes, which will be so easy to achieve if we just rush headfirst into hydrogen everywhere without thinking about why. So please subscribe if you're interested to take a deep dive into hydrogen technology with me. And if you're working on a hydrogen project that you would like to share, and especially if you think that I am totally wrong about which applications have potential and you want an opportunity to tell me why, then please get in touch with a comment or on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'll see you next time.